Believe it or not, when he doesn't call or message you, it means something. But it may not mean what you desperately wish it would. Most of the time, we are not heartbroken by reality. We are shattered by the illusions we create when silence enters the room. That silence, that pause, that absence, it becomes a mirror. And what hurts is not just the echo of no message or no call, but what that echo whispers back to you about your own worth, your own fears, and your own attachment. You might sit by your phone and wait for a sign, a vibration, a notification, something, anything to validate your importance in his world. But every second that passes without a word feels like a rejection. And in that pain, you begin to write a story. Story where you are not enough, where you are forgotten, where your light was too bright or your love too intense. But this is not the truth. This is the storm your mind creates when stillness becomes uncomfortable. The truth is far simpler and far more freeing. When he does not reach out, it means that his focus is elsewhere. And that may be painful to accept. But it is not a reflection of your value. It is a reflection of where his attention naturally flows. Some people walk into your life to teach you how little you need from others to feel whole. Silence is not just emptiness. It is space. Space where your own voice can grow stronger, where your clarity begins to return. Let go of the grip that tries to hold on to what does not reach back. Not with anger, not with pride, but with peace. Because the most powerful thing you can ever do is to stop asking why you were not chosen, and instead start asking why you kept choosing someone who could not see you. The moment you stop chasing the noise, you begin to hear your own wisdom. You begin to understand that presence does not beg to be noticed. It simply is. And you, in your silence, are still enough. You, even without his attention, still carry the sun in your chest. There is nothing more powerful than a person who is no longer afraid of being alone with themselves. So the next time he doesn't call, or message, or reach back, pause, breathe. Do not react from fear or need. Instead, return to yourself. Sit in the quiet and listen. The universe is trying to show you something. Not about him, but about you. And what it wants to say is this: you are not waiting to be chosen. You are learning to remember. You were never unworthy to begin with. There is a language most people never learn to hear. A language that speaks not in words, not in actions, but in silence. It is in that space, in the absence of a call or a message, where truth begins to whisper. When he does not reach out, it is not just about a missed text or a call that never came. It is about what that absence triggers within you. It is about the dialogue that begins to unfold in your mind, the questions that burn in your chest, and the emotional spiral that often follows. You see, silence is rarely just silence. It is communication without sound. It is a mirror reflecting what you believe about yourself. The moment he doesn't reply, your mind rushes to fill the gap, and it rarely fills it with peace. Instead, it brings up fears. Maybe I said too much. Maybe I shouldn't have shown how I feel. Maybe I'm not what he wants. Maybe I was never enough. But pause. Ask yourself, where do these thoughts truly come from? We've been conditioned to believe that someone else's attention equals our worth. That love must be proven by constant validation, that if they stop talking to us, we did something wrong. But what if his silence has nothing to do with your worth, and everything to do with his journey? What if it's not rejection, but redirection? Not punishment, but protection? When someone withdraws their energy from you, they are giving you clarity. It may not come in the form of words, but clarity doesn't always need a voice. Sometimes it comes with an empty screen, a quiet room, and a long stretch of time that teaches you more than 100 conversations ever could. You wait for the phone to buzz. You check if your message was seen. You replay the last interaction over and over, searching for clues. Was I too available, too distant, too open? But all this energy, this desperation to decode, is energy that leaks from your soul into a space that gives you nothing back. It's like pouring water into a cup with no bottom. No matter how much you give, it never feels full. But the silence is not the enemy. It is the teacher. It shows you where you still feel unworthy, where you believe that being wanted makes you valuable, that being remembered makes you lovable, that being chased means you matter. And it is in this exact space that your healing can begin. When he doesn't call or message you, it might sting. That sting is not about him. It's about the parts of you that still seek someone outside of you to confirm that you are enough. It's about the parts of you that confuse attention with affection, consistency with love, effort with sincerity. Sometimes people pull away not because they are cruel, but because they never knew how to stay. They never learned to carry the depth you bring. They are not ready for the kind of truth you live. And so, instead of facing the intensity, they retreat into silence. And while you're left wondering why you're not enough, the reality is that you were simply too real for someone still afraid of their own reflection. It's hard to sit with silence. But if you allow yourself to lean into it, instead of running from it, it becomes your power. Because that is where the most important conversation begins. Not with him, but with yourself. Do you only feel worthy when someone validates you? Do you only feel seen when someone watches you? Do you only feel lovable when someone says they love you? If so, then every unanswered message, every unreturned call becomes a wound. But if you begin to shift your view, if you begin to see silence not as rejection but as redirection, you begin to reclaim your energy. What if this silence is the pause you needed to hear your own voice again? What if his absence is the gift that leads you back to yourself? What if not getting the call was the call, the wake-up call to stop pouring your light into people who live in shadow? You do not need to chase what is already yours. You do not need to fight for a place in someone's life if your presence alone does not invite it. Let silence do what it does best. It reveals the truth. Let it show you that the one who is meant for you will not confuse you. They will not make you wonder. They will not go quiet when your soul is speaking. There was a woman once who spent nights crying on the bathroom floor because he stopped calling. Days turned into weeks, and the silence became unbearable. She checked his last scene. She replayed his laughter. She wondered what she had done, but eventually, the silence did what his words never could. It taught her that she was never meant to beg for what was freely given, that her love was not a burden, but a blessing he was not ready to carry. And from that silence, she rose. She rebuilt herself. She no longer waited for the phone to ring. She became the sound she had longed to hear. She became the peace she once begged for. And in doing so, she discovered that no message was, in fact, the message. So when he doesn't call or message you, listen deeply, not to him, but to yourself. The answers are there. The wisdom is there. The love you seek is already within you, waiting for you to stop searching in others and come home. Not every silence needs to be filled. Some silences are sacred. Some silences are survival. Some silences are saving you from what you do not yet see. And in the end, the greatest thing you'll ever learn is that when someone goes quiet, it may not be your loss. It might just be your beginning. There is a moment when longing turns into suffering, and that moment usually passes unnoticed. You don't even realize when it happens. It begins innocently, with curiosity. You wonder why he hasn't messaged, why he didn't respond, why he was online but didn't reply. And then, before you know it, curiosity becomes need. Need becomes ache, and ache becomes obsession. You are not weak for feeling this way. You are not foolish. You are human. What hurts is not just the silence, it is the meaning you attach to it. Somewhere along the way, someone convinced you that love must look like attention, that presence must feel like constant connection, that silence is abandonment, and that attachment is loyalty. But love is not proven through possession, and presence is not proven through pings on a phone. The ache you feel when he doesn't reach out is not just about him. It is about the parts of you that still fear being forgotten. The inner child that still believes love is something to be earned. The younger version of you who still thinks that being ignored means being unlovable. Attachment says, I need you to feel whole. Awareness says, I am whole, and I choose to share my light. These are not the same paths. One leads you into a cycle of pain, confusion, and longing. The other leads you to peace, clarity, and freedom. But most people unknowingly walk the first road. You think you are in love, but often you are simply addicted to the idea of being chosen. You think you are waiting for a message, but in reality, you are waiting for a version of yourself that finally feels validated. And the more he stays silent, the more you feel that ache grow. You stare at the screen knowing full well no message is coming, and yet your mind replays every moment. Was I too much? Did I text too soon? Did I seem too eager? But what you are really asking is this: am I enough? And that question is the root of attachment. The belief that you are not enough without someone else's confirmation, that your worth must be mirrored back to you by another, that the absence of attention is the presence of failure. But awareness breaks that illusion. Awareness says, I do not need your reply to confirm that I exist. I do not need your message to validate that I matter. I am here, and I am already whole. There's a woman who once sat by her phone for 3 days, refusing to sleep properly, afraid she would miss his message. When she finally got a reply, it was cold. dry, distant. And yet she clung to those words like they were sunlight after winter. She told herself it meant he still cared, but deep down, she knew it wasn't care. It was convenience. He responded because he could, not because he truly wanted to reach her soul. Still, she held on, because to let go meant facing a deeper pain, the pain of feeling forgotten, the pain of letting go of the fantasy she created around it. That was not love. That was attachment. That was fear dressed as romance. There's a difference between waiting for someone because you care and waiting because you've made them the center of your emotional world. One is rooted in respect, the other in desperation, and no one teaches you the difference until you've bled for it, until you've wept for it, until you've lost yourself in the process of trying to keep someone who was never truly holding you. Awareness is born the moment you realize you are not waiting for him. You are waiting for you, for the version of you who can let go without collapsing, who can feel pain without making it personal, who can be alone without calling it loneliness. The one who is aware does not beg. She does not chase. She does not shrink herself in the name of someone else's approval. She watches the silence and listens to what it teaches her. She does not curse it. She studies it. And in that stillness, she begins to see. She sees that every unanswered message was a doorway back to herself, that every silence was a sacred reminder to check her own heart before giving it away. She sees that the more she attached to someone else's behavior, the more she abandoned her own truth, and slowly she returns, not to him, but to herself. Letting go does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop bleeding for someone who doesn't even bring you a bandage. It means you stop defining yourself by how someone else sees you, or doesn't. It means you release the illusion that your happiness is located in someone else's hands. The ones who are awake, the ones who are free, they are not free because they never felt pain. They are free because they no longer obey their pain. They feel it, breathe through it, and rise above it. They do not run from silence. They sit inside it. They close their eyes and hear their soul whisper. You do not need to be chased to be cherished. You do not need a message to know you are loved. You do not need a reply to be real. And that is the moment everything changes. The shift, the peace, the clarity. When awareness takes root, the attachment dies quietly. Not with rage, not with drama, but with grace. You wake up one day and realize you haven't checked your phone in hours. You didn't wait for a message. You didn't wonder what he's doing. You were too busy living, too full of your own presence, too aware of your own light. And in that space, you are no longer a prisoner of someone else's silence. You are the guardian of your own peace. Not because you don't feel, but because now finally you see. There is something terrifying about silence when you crave a voice. When he doesn't call, when he doesn't message, your first instinct is to assume that something is missing and that something is you. You begin to see yourself through the lens of absence, as if your value is directly tied to whether or not someone shows up for you. And this is where the mind begins to deceive you, softly, quietly, cruelly. It tells you that if you were prettier, he would have called. If you were more interesting, he would have replied. If you were worth it, he would have stayed. These thoughts don't come all at once. They drip into your soul like water on stone, wearing down your confidence, one drop at a time. But what if the absence has nothing to do with you? What if his silence is not a reflection of your worth, but a reflection of his path? A path that was never aligned with yours in the first place. What if it's not rejection, but simply misalignment? What if you are not missing anything but rather being protected from something that does not match your spirit? You are not the message that never came. You are not the call that was never made. You are not defined by someone else's absence. That is not your identity. There was once a woman who thought that every goodbye was a verdict. Every unanswered text was a judgment. She wore her heartbreak like a second skin, believing that the people who left had taken pieces of her with them. She believed she became smaller each time someone walked away, but she was wrong. No one can take your light unless you hand it to them. No one can reduce your worth unless you start measuring it by their presence. You are not a puzzle with missing pieces. You are not a sentence that needs to be finished by someone else. You are not half of anything. When someone chooses not to show up for you, it doesn't mean you're unlovable. It means they were unable to love in the way you deserve. That's not your failure. That's their limitation. And it is not your job to make someone see your value when they are looking at the world through a fogged mirror. It takes a deep kind of courage to sit with that, to not chase after clarity, to not beg for closure, to not shrink yourself in hopes that maybe then he will come back. It takes strength to stand in your silence and say, I am still whole. I am still here. I am still me. The ego will try to convince you otherwise. It will replay the moments, the conversations, the laughter. It will whisper, but we had something. It will shout, he said he cared. But here's the truth. Words are easy. Presence is not. Presence is where real love lives. In the showing up, in the trying, in the quiet kind of consistency that doesn't need to be loud to be real. You are not what was left behind. You are the one still standing. So many of us become addicted to our wounds. We wear the silence like shackles and convince ourselves that healing will come when they finally come back. But healing doesn't wait for anyone's return. It begins the moment you stop looking outside of yourself for what has always lived within. You are not broken because someone walked away. People leave for 1,000 reasons, most of which have nothing to do with you. Sometimes they are still searching for themselves. Sometimes they are not capable of depth. Sometimes they simply don't recognize beauty when it's in front of them. You could dim your light so they don't feel blinded. You could bend yourself in half to make them comfortable, but eventually you'd break, and they still wouldn't stay. Not because you're not enough, but because they were never looking for what you had to offer. There is a moment, often quiet and unnoticed, when you begin to return to yourself. When you wake up and no longer reach for your phone in panic. When you no longer refresh your messages hoping to see his name. When your mind is finally silent because your heart is no longer at war with reality. That moment is not the end of love, it is the beginning of self-love. You start to reclaim the pieces you thought were lost. You laugh again, not because he texted, but because your soul remembered its own joy. You sleep deeply, not because he called, but because your spirit no longer feels the need to bear. You shine, not for anyone else, but because that is your natural state when you're no longer dimming yourself to be seen. You are not defined by who chooses you. You are revealed by how you choose yourself. His absence does not prove your emptiness. It simply points you toward your fullness. It shows you the space within yourself that is still aching to be held, not by him, but by you. So hold yourself in the silence, in the stillness, in the hours when no one is watching. That's where your power lives. That's where your truth grows. You are not invisible because someone turned away. You are luminous. Even if no one is clapping, even if no one is calling, even if no one is watching right now. One day, someone will see you and not be afraid of your depth. Someone will not disappear when you speak your truth. But until then, do not wait to be loved. Be the one who loves herself so deeply that silence becomes peace, not punishment. You are not the absence. You are the presence that remains. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is nothing. To not call, to not message, to not ask if everything is okay. To resist the urge to fix what isn't even yours to fix. But this is where the greatest clarity begins. Not in the noise, not in the explanation, not in the desperate need to understand, but in the silence of letting go. When someone pulls away, our first instinct is to grip tighter. Our mind screams for a reason. The heart begs for a sign. We are wired to chase what is slipping through our fingers, as if by holding on tighter we could stop the pain. But what if the truth is only visible when we let go? You do not see clearly when you're desperate. You do not see someone's intentions when you are drowning in hope. Hope can be beautiful, but it can also blind. And if your hope is built on a version of someone who only exists in your imagination, you are no longer relating to reality. You are relating to a dream. And a dream can't hold your heart. When he doesn't reach out, when he leaves your messages unread, when his silence becomes the loudest thing in your life, it hurts. But that pain is not asking you to chase him. That pain is asking you to come back to yourself, to step away, to detach. Not because you stopped caring, but because you started seeing. There is a woman who waited for him every night. She didn't say it out loud, but she left her phone on loud, kept checking it every few minutes, rereading old messages for some kind of reassurance. She believed that the silence was temporary, that maybe he was busy, that maybe he needed space. But days turned into weeks, and her smile slowly faded. It wasn't the silence that broke her. It was what she was telling herself while waiting inside that silence. She told herself he must still care, that something must be wrong, that if she just waited a little longer he'd come back to the version of him she once knew. But he didn't. Because the person she was holding on to wasn't the person he had become, or maybe he never was. Clarity is brutal, but it's sacred, and detachment is the path to it. When you step back, not with bitterness, but with peace, you begin to see. You see who shows up without being asked. You see who values your energy without needing to be convinced. You see who sees you not as a convenience, but as a connection. Detachment does not mean closing your heart. It means opening your eyes. It means realizing that love is not proven by how tightly you hold on, but how gracefully you let go when something is no longer meant for you. You do not need to turn cold. You do not need to become heartless. You simply need to become clear. Detach from the fantasy. Detach from the potential. Detach from the story you wrote in your head about how things could be if you just tried a little harder, if you just healed a little faster, if you just remembered how much you gave. The truth is, you should not have to convince anyone to choose you. When someone truly values you, you will not have to guess. You will not have to read between the lines. Love is not hidden in mixed signals. Devotion does not hide behind silence. Real love stands tall in the open and says, I'm here, you matter, I see you. And until that kind of love arrives, protect your heart from anything that makes you question your worth. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away. Not out of pride, but out of deep self-respect. Not because you hate them, but because you finally love yourself enough to stop begging. There is such power in non-reaction. In no longer needing to explain yourself to people who never made the effort to understand you. In no longer trying to prove your value to someone who was blind to it. In choosing peace over closure, dignity over desperation, silence over screaming. That's when clarity pours in like sunlight through an open window. You realize that letting go wasn't a loss, it was liberation. That silence wasn't cruelty, it was clarity. That detachment didn't mean you stopped loving. It meant you stopped breaking yourself into pieces to be understood. You begin to see that you never needed them to validate your light. Your light was never in question. It was only hidden behind your willingness to settle for flickers instead of flames. So detach, not because you're cold, not because you gave up, but because you're finally strong enough to stop feeding what starves you. You see clearly now. You see that love is not supposed to hurt like that. You see that real connection doesn't fade when things get quiet. You see that your peace matters more than someone else's presence. And maybe one day he'll realize what he lost in you. But that's no longer your concern, because you've already found what he couldn't give you. You are no longer waiting for a message. You have become the message. You have waited long enough. You have searched long enough. You have hurt in silence, broken in places no one ever saw, and kept hoping that someone else's presence would fix what you believed was missing in you. But here is the truth. The kind that doesn't whisper, it roars. You were never missing. You were never lacking. You were never waiting for him. You were waiting for you. There is a version of you that is untouchable by rejection, unaffected by silence, and unmoved by absence. She does not tremble when someone pulls away. She does not shatter when the message never comes. She does not shrink to fit into a place where she was never meant to belong. That version of you has always existed, buried beneath the noise of needing to be chosen. Let them talk. Let them vanish. Let them misunderstand you. The world will not always recognize your worth, but you must, because if you continue to hand over your power every time someone turns their back, you will spend your life chasing shadows while your own light goes unseen. You are not here to beg. You are not here to wait. You are not here to be half loved, half seen, half held. You were born for something deeper. And that depth cannot be touched by someone who only wades in shallow waters. You were not made to be someone's option. You are a force of nature, not a backup plan. You have to stop asking people to see you when their vision is clouded. Stop handing your heart to people who haven't even figured out how to hold their own. Stop explaining your soul to those who only ever listen to reply, never to understand. Some people do not deserve access to your energy. And that is not arrogance, that is awareness. You are not what you lost, you are what you survived. And survival, my dear, is not weakness. It is proof that your spirit chose to rise every single time it was pushed to the ground. There will be times when you miss him. That is human. But do not confuse nostalgia with need. Do not return to pain because it's familiar. Do not reopen doors that led you into darkness, just because the silence on this side feels uncomfortable. Growth is rarely easy, but pain that teaches you something is far better than comfort that keeps you asleep. Remember this. If someone can leave you without explanation, let that be your answer. If someone can watch you cry and still walk away, let that be your closure. If someone can disappear when you needed them most, let that be the clarity you were looking for. You do not need words from someone who already told you everything through their silence. And maybe you think you're too broken now, that you gave too much, that the damage can't be undone. But I promise you, there is a fire still burning in you. There is a version of you that does not just survive. She conquers. She rebuilds. She rises. And when she does, she will not even recognize the woman who once sat by her phone waiting for a call from someone who couldn't even see her worth. You don't need closure. You need awakening. You don't need an apology. You need freedom. You don't need him to see your value. You need to remember it for yourself. There is a reason why storms come before the calm. There is a reason why the night stretches long before the first light breaks. This pain is not here to destroy you. It's here to rebuild you. Stronger, sharper, unshakable. You are the author of your healing. You are the sculptor of your rebirth. You are not what happened to you. You are what you decide to become next. So let this be your turning point. Let this silence be the moment you rise. Let this absence be the space where you breathe yourself back into power. The greatest revenge is not anger. It is clarity. It is elevation. It is peace so deep that even the ones who tried to break you wonder why they no longer affect you. And when you rise, because you will, remember this. You don't lose anything when you let go of what was never holding you. Your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see it. Rock bottom is a foundation. You build from there. Sometimes you have to forget how you feel and remember what you deserve. Do not chase people. Be yourself and do your thing. The right people, the ones who really belong in your life, will come to you. And they will stay. So stop waiting for him to return. Return to yourself. Return to the woman who once dreamed without fear. Return to the soul that once laughed without limits. Return to the fire that burned before you, handed your light to someone who didn't know how to keep it warm. You are not waiting anymore. You are arriving. Fully, freely, fiercely. This is not heartbreak. This is your awakening.